Hey guys, so today we have a super awesome guest that is going to be sharing the message with us today, and we're super pumped because a lot of y'all know Miss Davis from when she taught here before. She's coming back to give us the message today, and we're all super pumped about it. We have one announcement, if you can click the next slide, that I'm going to share really quickly. So we're doing a coat drive. It's till November 1st, so if you bring like hoodies, jackets, and pullovers, I'm in the process of talking to Mr. Hibbard, which I haven't yet, but I will. We're going to do that to have a goal for us as a school. And if we get above the goal, then something's going to happen. What that something will be, I have no idea yet, but it's gonna be awesome. Shave my head. No. I look terrible bald or shaved head. I haven't done that since basic training. All right. Give Mrs. Davis a huge round of applause, please, as she comes up here. Thanks.
Can you guys hear me? Is the mic on? Oh, no. It's on, but you let me know. We're good now? Sweet. Okay, so I'm Mrs. Davis, and I'm pumped to talk to you guys today. And first, I just want to show you, because if you saw me last year, I was pregnant, and so I want to show you what that baby looks like now, because she's real cute. So, but first, I'm talking about the dangers of isolation, but this is important too, so I'll show you this. Oh, everybody, oh. Yeah, she's cute. So her name's Rebecca Rosemary, for anyone who asked her name, and I said I'm not telling the name until she's born. She's precious, she's 4 months old, just the cutest thing. So I am staying home with her and not here with you guys, and honestly, that was a harder decision to make than I ever thought it would be. I thought, I'm for sure going to come teach. Then I had her, and I was like, oh, this is going to be really difficult. And so still to this day, like, I can't come back, and I'm like, oh, this is my home. Being with you guys is my home. And so it's difficult to be at home at sometimes, and I knew it would have been difficult to be here. But God's faithful, and I'm pumped to talk to you about that today. So we're talking about the dangers of isolation. So you guys have been talking about community this year. Nod your heads. Yeah. And community is honestly so important. And after everything with like the pandemic, I think more we've realized we need people. Even if you're an introvert and you're kind of like, I hate people, we all realize like we need people. And so I want to show you this clip that probably 99% of you have seen before, but I love it. And it is like a perfect picture of what I'm talking about today. So watch this clip, and then I'm going to talk about why I chose it. I know, right? There we go.
Captain Sam, can you hear me? On your left. Assemble.
Y'all, yes, can we just cheer for that moment? It's so good. Honestly though, y'all, like, every single time I watch that, I like fight back tears. Oh, intense, right? I'm not even kidding, like just standing over there, I'm like fighting back tears. I'm like, you will not cry this time. And I don't know if you're the same as me, but there's a lot of reasons why I think we get moved by scenes like that. And one of the reasons I want to talk about today is a lot of us, we feel isolated. Like, I think a lot of us, we can relate to Captain America. Like, he's the only one left. He's completely beaten down, broken, bruised. He has a broken shield, like, and he is facing an impossible enemy. Like, he's looking at this army, and they're impossible. They're like growing, and yeah, Captain America is a superhero. He's awesome, but can he fight that entire army by himself? No. Like, that's why he didn't. That's why the Avengers came back. And I think a lot of times we feel like Captain America, we're facing things like divorce in our families or illness. We're facing things like friend troubles and drama and broken families, broken relationships, depression, anxiety. Like, those are the things, those are kind of like the armies we're facing. And we feel a lot of times like Captain America, where you're like, I'm completely beaten down by my life. I'm bruised, I'm broken, and I'm alone. And I'm facing this huge thing that I can't face by myself. But here I am, I'm alone. And there's such danger in isolation. Like, we were not created to live alone. No matter who you are, what your personality is, what your interests are, you were not meant to live alone. And I'm going to talk about 3 reasons, like 3 dangers of why isolation is so dangerous for every one of us, adults, kids, old people, like everyone. So the first one that we'll talk about is we are susceptible to enemy attack. So just like Captain America, when he's like the last one in this battle, he's going to lose. Like, he's completely susceptible to being attacked by the enemy. So you can see it on Thanos' face. He's like, what are you going to do, Captain America? Like, he is facing this impossible enemy, and there's no way that Captain America by himself can defeat an army that size. And as followers of Jesus, we can recognize that we're in a battle every single day for our souls. And whether or not you see it, you probably feel it. And if we're going to try to go in the battle alone, 1, we're going to be completely susceptible to attack by ourselves, and 2, we're probably going to lose. And so if we read John 10:10, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I've come that they may have life and have it to the full. The enemy that we have is very, very real. We can't see him, but we can see the work. Hello, look at our world. We can see his work in our world, and a lot of times we can see his work in our lives. But one of the biggest ways that he tries to steal, kill, and destroy us may not be big things, like pandemics can really ruin things for us and things like that, but a lot of times it's the small things that come within the big things. So things like lies. One of the biggest ways that he tries to attack us is through feeding us lies about who we are, and who we are to other people and who we are to God. So that may sound like no one loves you. You're just a burden on people. You'll never be good enough. You're not as good as him or her, and you never will be. Your parents love your brother or sister more than they love you. It may be your anxiety will never go away. You're going to have this for the rest of your life. No one wants you around. You're stupid. You're ugly. You're fat. People don't like you. Like, I don't know if you've heard those lies before in your life, but I can guarantee you there's some lie that each of us wakes up and it becomes the soundtrack of our day. I'm an adult who's been following Jesus for 13 years. And literally, I'm in a place of isolation right now, and I'm experiencing lies. I chose to stay home, but that's an isolating thing because I'm home all day with a baby who doesn't talk. She tries, but it's not really words. And I used to be in a place like this, where I worked across the hall from my best friends. And if I was feeling something or experiencing something, I could just walk across the hall, walk next door, and just cry or ask questions or just sit and have a quiet moment with people. And now I'm by myself. And I've noticed that Satan is taking that opportunity to attack with lies. Lies for me, like what I'm hearing is you're a burden on people. And no one really likes having you around. They're just kind of faking it when you're around. Like, I'm an adult and these are things that I'm believing. And they're the things that are keeping me up at night. So I can only imagine what all of us in this room collectively are hearing and experiencing. And that's because we're alone. And if you even think about it, like Satan attacked Jesus when he was alone in the wilderness for 40 days. Like that's when he attacks, is when we're alone. We're susceptible to attack when we're alone. And the second bad thing about being isolated is that we can't experience Jesus fully. So one of the reasons why the Avengers scene is so epic is because like it's like every superhero comes in with like their own power, right? Like I love how Ant-Man like comes out and he's huge and then he like drops Hulk on the ground, even though you feel like Hulk is so big, but you're like Ant-Man's even bigger, and you have like everybody has their own power. And as you watch the rest of that scene, each power is like used in a very special way to defeat the enemy, right? Like if it was just a bunch of Captain Americas, they probably have a pretty good chance, but like ultimately, sorry, I'm totally spoiling everything for you, Iron Man is the one who like finishes him off. And so if they didn't have Iron Man, the enemy wouldn't have been finished off by everybody else. And so our life following Jesus is exactly like that. Like we experience Jesus fully when we are with each other, and we get to experience like the different parts of like gifts and things like that Jesus has given each one of you. And when we experience those collectively, we experience Jesus more fully. If we just are by ourselves, we will never, ever experience Jesus the way we were meant to be, because we're not meant to follow Jesus alone. So like Paul even proves this. This is something I like love this prayer, pray it over my daughter every night, but this always stops me, because when I pray this over just my daughter every night, like it has to include other people. And so in the midst of that, I also pray that she would have friends who would do this with her. So it says, and I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power together with all the Lord's holy people to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. And like the key thing here is that with all the Lord's holy people. So like if we're gonna grasp the width and depth and height and breadth of Jesus' love, then we have to do it with other people. And I've talked to so many people about their relationships with Jesus, and I'm sure like 100% of you, like all of us, adults and kids included, in this room have at one point in our lives felt far away from Jesus and just felt like, I don't know, I don't feel him, I don't experience him. I come to like chapel, I come to church, I come to Cal, and still he feels far away. I don't know. And the reality is a lot of times that's due to the fact that we are isolated. And yeah, sure, you're in a room full of people who could call themselves Christians, but I guarantee a lot of you still feel isolated even when you're surrounded by a lot of people. In fact, for me, sometimes being surrounded by a lot of people makes me feel more isolated. So I'm just surrounded by people and they don't really know me or what's going on in my life, and that makes us feel isolated. And so we were never meant to follow Jesus alone. And so the cool thing is that we get to be in community with other followers of Jesus when we are not isolated. Like if someone, I'll give an example. Miss Rumbuck brings the energy. We all know that. And if I wasn't friends with Miss Rumbuck, then I wouldn't really know that like contagious joy that God brings, because like she showed that to me as a friend. And so when we follow Jesus together, she brings the energy and the joy, and I bring, I don't know, like intentional questions is what I've been told that I'm good at. And so, you know, not that she's bad at that and not that I'm bad at joy, but she's so good at it, and that's a gift that's been given to her, and that's a gift that's been given to me. And together, we experience Jesus more fully. And the more people we pull into that, the more we get to experience Jesus more fully, which is really cool. But the minute we start to draw away from people is when we start to feel isolated, and we will never experience God fully. And the last danger is we are guaranteed loss. If you think about if Captain America, again, would have fought that battle alone, he would have lost. Like, yeah, sure, it would have been like kind of cool if like, hey, yeah, Captain America finished him off, but then he finishes like the enemy off, and then what? He's alone. Cool. Like, none of the other Avengers are there. They're all dead. And he won. Like, it just wouldn't be cool. And the reality is he wouldn't have won. And we know also that I think we love epic battle scenes like that so much. Like, they're just the best. And I think that there's this innate thing in us that makes us love that so much, because that is our like future following Christ. Like, we get to be on the Avengers side if we are following Christ of a final battle where our enemy Satan is completely defeated. And that is like so sweet to us. Like, we love that, and that makes me tear up, because like in Revelation, it literally, like, if you read it, I didn't put all the verses up here, but we're going to talk about some. It's like a gruesome, crazy battle at the very end where Satan is completely defeated, and it's promised to us that we will win. But if we're not following Jesus, if we're not joining him in his army, and we just choose to be isolated and choose to like enter like any kind of, like, literally any time in life, like if we're facing sin, if we're facing temptation, anything, like, we are guaranteed to lose if we try to do it alone. Doesn't matter how big or small the problem is, like, we are guaranteed to lose. So this is like one of the sweet things in Revelation that it says. Says, then I heard a loud voice in heaven say, now have come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Messiah. For the accuser of our brothers and sisters, who accuses them before our God day and night, has been hurled down. They triumphed over him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. And so what's so sweet is the accuser is Satan, because what he does is he accuses us of lies day and night. Like, whether we even realize it or not, it has become the cadence of our lives. Like, we are walking in lies a lot of times, and we don't even realize it, because Satan is just accusing us. But what Revelation is saying is that he's going to be hurled down, and we're going to triumph by the blood of the Lamb, by Jesus, and his death for us, and also by the word of our testimony, by being able to speak truth and what God has done in our lives. And when we do that in the lives of other people, that brings community instead of isolation. But it's only through Jesus that we can do this, right? Like, we could try to like get people in our lives to try to defeat Satan and try to defeat those lies, but if they're not pointing us to Jesus, then it's not the truth. And that's what we need to actually defeat. So we're going to get a little practical about, like, let's get out of isolation, because I don't want you to leave being like, okay, it's dangerous to be isolated, and then be like, now what? Okay? So I want to talk about 3 things that we can do to get out of isolation, because I want you to walk out of this room knowing, like, I can get out of isolation. I can get out of this today. I don't have to be here anymore. So one of them is get real. A lot of us wear a mask, not like the COVID mask, but like, you know what I mean, a metaphorical mask of this is who I am, and I'm not going to share what's really going on in my life. I'm going to be funny instead. I'm going to crack jokes in class. I'm going to, just be cool. I'm going to look good every day. I'm never going to share what's actually going on in my life. We all experience it to some extent, but get real with people. Like, reach out to people. Hey, my parents are going through a divorce, and it's really hard. And I know, like, stuff like that is scary. Like, it's really scary to take that step in a relationship and say, this is really difficult, because you have no idea how they're going to react. They may be like, and then you're like, okay, I don't know what to do next. They may laugh at you. We go through all the worst case scenarios when it comes to sharing something that's difficult in our lives. But a lot of times, the least people do is, I'm really sorry, I'll pray for you. And the most people do is, me too. Can we talk about it? I'm so glad you said something. And then a best friendship is formed. Try it. And I know it is so hard, because especially when we're in a Christian community, we are like, have this weird thing where we think we need to have it all together. But actually, Christians are like the messiest people ever. And the world knows it. But we're trying to like put on an image, like everything's fine. And it's not. And so find somebody, you don't have to tell the whole world, but find one person that you can be like, hey, this has been hard for me, and I just want a place to talk about it, and see what happens. For me, like, it's formed the best relationships ever. Like, I do not have deep relationships without getting real with my friends. Like, we cry together, we talk about what's real in life, but like, that doesn't mean like that's all we ever do. Like, we laugh, we jam to music, we like go buy milkshakes, whatever it is. But in the midst of that, we're just real about life. And I know that I can trust those friends, because that's what we were created to be. It's that community of, let's take off the mask and be real. The next one is get in God's word. And honestly, it's just like, we just need to throw away all of our excuses for not reading the Bible. I had a conversation yesterday with some girls that were in my small group that were 8th graders last year. And one of them asked an awesome question. She was like, why read the Bible if I know I'm going to be confused? And I was like, that's such a valid question. But here's the reality is we're promised that the word is alive and active, and it's our sword against the enemy. It's our one weapon. And so while lies are bombarding you every single day, the only thing that is our weapon against that, it's not ignoring it. It's not saying that's not true. That's part of it. But it's literally reading God's word and seeing what he has to say about you, about himself, about how to love other people. Because when we get into God's word, truth starts to fill our minds, and sometimes we don't even realize it. Honestly, I read the Bible and sometimes I'm like, cool. And that's okay. You don't have to walk away and be like, yes, I'm so empowered. I'm going to go follow Jesus now. So hardcore. No, sometimes you read the Bible and you're like, what was that? And then you're like, okay. And then you shut it and walk away. Sometimes you read the Bible and you're like, what? It says that? I had no idea. God, you literally just gave me exactly what I needed to hear today. But if we never try, then we're just going to keep being bombarded by lies. And the lies are going to be what becomes the soundtrack of our lives. And it's never going to change. It's not just going to go away. Satan's not just going to be like, okay, I'm tired of attacking you. I'm going to go find someone else. No, he's not going to tire. And so we have to be ready to fight it with truth. And maybe that means like you read the Bible and then you're like, hey, friend, I just read this. I think you'd need it today. Try it. See what happens. And the last thing is get in community. And I'm not just talking about like find friends. Friends are great. They're great for not being that feeling of isolation, but isolation still exists when you can be surrounded by people if they're not pointing you to Jesus and following Jesus with you. And I'm not just talking about like find people from Cal, because the reality is not everyone in this room is like really running after Jesus, and that's okay. But if you really, really want to get out of isolation, you have to find people who are following Jesus, running hard after him to the best of their ability, like making a mess of their lives in the process, because we all do, but like really want to follow Jesus and really want to point you to Jesus. Because if we don't have that, we're still going to be isolated. You can have like 10 group chats that you talk to every single day, and if none of them are pointing you to Jesus, you're still going to feel isolated, and you're still going to be alone. And so the interesting thing about Captain America in this is that it's not like the army arrives and then like the enemy's like, oh no, and then they like run away. Thanos' face like kind of gets freaked out, but like, and like starts to get worried as the army gets bigger. But I mean, like, he's not like, oh my gosh, I'm too scared, I'm gonna run away now. They fight. And so the reality is when you get community in your life, you may find that like your problems don't just go away, but you get this like sweet, strong feeling of like, yeah, my parents are going through a divorce, but I have like this sweet friend group that every single time my parents are fighting, I can text them and they're there to talk to me, pray for me. They'll pick me up. We'll go hang out. Like, I have like a good group of friends. Or I know that whenever I'm like, depression feels like it's overwhelming to me, I have a group of friends that I can hang out with. They can point me to truth. They can pray with me. And like, I can feel like I'm not alone. Like I have an army behind me to fight this problem that's in my life. And so that's exactly what, like, when we wholeheartely follow Jesus, we're literally guaranteed to have a community of people if we'll just engage. And so, like, just imagine what it would be like if you were Captain America and you're in the midst of, like, facing the hardest thing in your life that you face. Like, just put it in your mind, whatever it is right now that you're facing that feels impossible and that you feel alone in facing it. And now imagine a friend comes behind you and says, look on your left. And that friend is like, I'm here with you. And then other friends start to join and they're like, me too. Yeah, I'm here too. I'm here too. I'm here too. And then all of a sudden you have this like army of friends that are like, yeah, you're facing a crazy, crazy enemy. I know. I'm facing it too, but we're going to do this together. Like, how sweet would that be if that was our lives? And it doesn't have to be like a movie. That can literally be our lives following Jesus. We literally can have friends who are like, let's get real. Let's talk about life. And let's do this together so you're not alone. But it cannot happen if you're just going to be like, nah, I'm not going to be real. I'm not going to talk to people. I'm just going to be like fun and funny, pretend like everything's fine, and move on, because you will be defeated by the enemy. Get in community. So my challenge for you today is to walk out of this room and find one person Either that you can say, hey, I'm really struggling, and this is what's going on in my life. Or I want you to find, and maybe you're someone you're like, you know what, life is like okay right now. I want you to find somebody, tap them on the shoulder, and say, look on your left. And that's going to be like your little cue that tells that friend, I'm here with you no matter what. Those are my 2 challenges for you. And I challenge you to like literally do that. Like walk out of this room. You don't have to share all your problems as you're walking down the hall. But some point today, don't wait. Tell someone, hey, this is going on in my life and it's difficult. Or tap someone on the shoulder, text them, whatever, and say, look on your left. I'm here for you. I'm going to pray for you guys. We'll move on. God, thanks so much that you give us community. Thank you that you love us and you want us to not follow you alone. Thanks that you yourself are in community with Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and so you show us how to be in perfect community. Thanks that you've given us different gifts so that together, when we work together, we see Jesus more clearly. Thanks that you've given us an army of believers that fights the enemy so that the enemy is literally completely pulverized, thrown down, that we don't have to live following lies because we have your truth. We don't have to live and walk out of this room believing we're not loved, because the reality is we're loved so deeply by you, and that will never change. Please help us to point each other to Jesus. Please help us to be real. Please help us to get in community. And God, I pray for anyone who's just scared to share what is going on in their lives with a friend. I pray that they would have the courage. Give them courage, give them boldness to share what's going on in their lives so that they can be honest and real, open, and just share. Even if it's a teacher or if it's a friend, whoever it is, God, I pray that you give them the boldness, give them the courage to just share. And if there's a friend right now that knows they need to be a good friend to somebody else, God, I pray that you give them the courage to say, look on your left, and come behind their friends so that we can be a community that faces the enemy with courage, strength, and triumph. So God, I pray over everyone in this school that is feeling isolated, God, that you would give them that next step today. In your name we pray all these things. Amen.